نفسنا ما بيرتوي إلا من هون. اسمع، بيدور الدولاب وبيدور الدولاب وبيدور هالدولاب وقلبك بعد ما داب. لحظة ولادتي عرافة في الزمان والقوة في عروقي تحرك الرياح. أنا المخلص، أنا الرب، أنا المخلص، أنا كلما أحتاج إليه هو أنا، هي أنا.
Hello everybody, welcome to Hiya Live. I'm joined by the wonderful performer, writer and musician Juliana Yazbeck, who's speaking to me from London. Welcome Juliana, ahlan. How are you doing?
Hi, I'm well. I'm in good health, which is great.
That's always good.
How are
these
you?
days. I'm good also, thank you. So to start off with, can you tell me a little bit about what you've been up to the last 12 months, how you've been navigating this really challenging period during the pandemic?
I think the first thing I want to say is not always very well. And I think it's really important that we're kind of open about that.
Totally.
I'm not going to pretend that I've had like this great ongoing routine and, you know, I don't know, following a special daily, you know, whatever. I'm not.
Yeah.
Some of it's been really, really messy. Some of it's been scary. So sometimes not very well.
Yeah.
I think my main goal, at least since I realized that this was going to take a while, and also that I wasn't very happy with the kind of overwhelming attempt to cling onto the capitalist pace of life. I was like, ooh, I don't know how I feel about that. And so as soon as I realized that, which was pretty much last spring, my main focus has been to survive this and to rest.
That sounds like a good approach.
Honestly, yes. Honestly.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. I mean, with the capitalist societies that we're living in, the kind of reflection of the lockdown for many people was this intense pressure to always produce, to do, for artists particularly, to be involved in every live stream possible. Whereas I saw that you instead, you turned your Instagram into like an online safe space for people. Can you tell us a little bit about that and where that came from and how it kind of realized itself?
That was it ended up being a one-off thing. And it was really beautiful. I still remember it's so weird because it was a virtual room, like Instagram Live is virtual like this.
Yeah.
But you could feel the silence, if that makes sense. It was really beautiful. I still remember that very well. That was also last spring. So yeah, when lockdown happened and pretty much every artist had everything canceled overnight, there was like a really frantic scramble to just keep everything as it is and put it online. And it was very noisy. I think it was overwhelming for a lot of audiences and artists. And at the same time, there was this new frightening virus that none of us could understand and that was out of control. And it was very instinctive. I really sensed a collective overwhelm and fear.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. And also there was a pressure for us to carry on performing. And I don't mean performing as artists, I mean performing socially in the online world. And I was like, ooh, we need to rest and we need to make it okay if we're falling apart, if we're breaking down, if we're taking a break, if we're figuring it out.
It's a lot to deal with, isn't it, really? The anxiety level up to the peak.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. So that's really where it came from. And it was just about an hour, maybe less. I did sing a little bit, some kind of healing melodies, some meditative songs. And it was about people just showing up with whatever they brought.
Yeah.
There was no performance.
No pressure.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Perfect. That's the kind of rhythm, I think is important to keep in these kind of days, rather than just trying to replicate the real world online when we've got this mass pressure over everything.
Exactly, over everything. It feels like there can be an opportunity to carve out a different way, because a different way is possible, a different pace, more gentleness, more softness, more humanness. Yeah.
And maybe it's a chance also just to reflect on how we're living in the outside world, like pre-pandemic anyway, this like constant pressure to like produce and be busy all the time, and
Yeah, 100%. I think you just hit the nail on the head. 100%. Yeah.
So can you tell me a little bit about, let's talk about your background. You, I think, were born in New Jersey, is that right?
Yes.
To Lebanese parents who fled the civil war, and then you grew up in Lebanon, and then you moved to London. How long have you been in London now?
I just passed 10 years here.
Mabruk.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, gosh, my gosh.
Long time. So how has this like very mixed cultural background and experience informed your music? And what have been some of the strongest influences musically and otherwise on your art from all of these different experiences growing up?
It's all over my music, I think. I don't know if, every person hears it differently, but I know that from an industry and marketing perspective, which is very much not the artist's perspective, there was always a nervousness around like, well, how do we sell you? What box do we put you in? You sing in multiple languages and, you're a bit genre bending. And for me, that never made sense. I was like, really? This music makes so much sense to me. And then it went and made so much sense to so many other people, because even like yourself, I mean, who among us has like one rigid boxed culture that we belong to, and what does that even mean in today's world? I think the music, it wasn't just influenced by my story, it was and is necessary to carve out that permission, that space, that actually stop telling us that we're underground, like we're mainstream. The experience of having multiple cultural backgrounds, or being mixed heritage, or speaking many languages, or being second generation immigrant, or first generation immigrant, these are mainstream experiences. Like the majority of people in the world have this experience, and it's very loud when we're being told that we're minorities. Like that's I don't even need to say how telling that is. Yeah,
I mean, it's just not representative anymore, is it? Like this kind of narrative. And it's dull, to be honest. Really dull.
Yes, it really is. And limiting, and in a way it's violent, because it's erasure.
Yeah, it's speaking about who has the dominant voice, who can tell the narrative. It's trying to erase others' stories.
Exactly. Yeah.
Have you noticed any change at all? Any positive changes towards like, the industry opening out, or is it still very much like how you've described it, the way they try to kind of box you in?
Look, I think what's happening, and you used the word industry, so I think specifically from an industry perspective, because from an artist perspective, not just myself, there's never been a question about who has a voice. From an industry perspective, I think they're catching on to the fact that actually, because really the industry thinks in numbers and money, so they're like, oh, wait a minute, we're actually losing out on a lot of potential profit by enforcing, these, like you said, dull and racist, frankly, ideas of like who gets to have a mainstream voice and who doesn't. So there is a shift there. They've kind of gone like, wow, look at all these artists who people love. We're not capitalizing on that. Okay, let's start having conversations.
Yeah.
And I think it's important that we also, like, it's artists who fought to do that. The industry didn't give us shit. Can we swear on this thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
For sure. And I guess it's only when they see the, like you're saying, the monetary value in giving a platform to these artists. You know, it's not like, let's have a wider industry, a more interesting industry.
Exactly. It's all about numbers. But you know, when you, as a collective, when you are the numbers, you can force industries, corporations to kind of listen, because there's money there. And unfortunately, that's the language that they speak. I have
dollars.
I have very clear feelings about that. But
yeah, totally. Your debut album, Sun God, which was released in 2018, and it had many amazing reviews. It blends Arabic tarab, hip-hop, electro-pop, poetry, and it's powerfully political as well. Can you tell me a little bit about how the album came together? Where did you record? Did you do everything on the album yourself? Did you collaborate with anybody? Yeah,
sure. It was written very gradually over a number of years, and I think that's the beauty of a debut album. It's not, now I'm making another album. It's just like, well, I have all this material that I've written, and it's enough to put it on a disc, on a record.
Yeah.
So in terms of writing, really, I'd been writing since my early 20s, and over the years, I just had bits of songs that I was very keen to kind of, okay, I'm ready now, let's give birth to this thing. It was all recorded and produced in London. Was that a lie? No, it was all recorded and produced in London. I think it was mixed. We mixed it remotely, so it was mixed somewhere in Europe. But so musically, yeah, it was a wonderful team. I worked with El Jihaz, Hamza Arnaout, nice. Formerly of 47 Soul, right, and Autostrad. And I remember I hesitated a bit to ask him, not because I was shy but because, and I knew him before we worked together.
Yeah.
But because I remember I really sat down with myself. And I know that this is a platform for women artists, and so I really want to share this story. And I was like, am I asking him to produce it because I feel like I need, a man who's like established and, to step in and kind of, and I was like, I'm not going to ask him to do it unless I'm absolutely sure that it's not coming from a place of insecurity, that it's coming from a place of we're equals.
Yeah.
And you are the mind, the producer brain that I really want on this project. And I meditated on that, and I was like, let's do it,
Yeah. Nice.
And it really was a beautiful collaboration. I have only positive things to say about that whole experience with him.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good when you can break it down and have that thought process to kind of check yourself, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And there is a lot of hierarchy in the industry, and it's very blatant where the male rock stars fit in and the rest of us fit in the industry, right? Not
Definitely.
Creatively.
Yeah,
so,
totally.
Yeah. And a few really cool artists feature on it as well. There's this wonderful woman called Cassandre Balosso-Bardin. And she plays, if you've heard the track White Roses, she plays all the wind instruments on that. So she plays a gaida bagpipe, which is a Mediterranean bagpipe, very ancient.
Wow.
She plays flutes. Yeah, she's amazing.
In the trees I find my comfort, though sometimes trees do stand in vain. If the trees can feel my vibe, do they know the kind of pain? There are those who are depressed, and there are those who are oppressed. But the trees know not nor care which painting of them is the best.
Wala Sbet played some tabl.
Nice.
Yeah.
Also
who
from
else?
47 Soul, right?
Yeah. Ramzi did some keys. A wonderful guitarist named Alexis Cragnou did most of the guitar on the album. It was really just a dream come true. I was like, wow, all these people are just saying yes. This is amazing.
So cool.
Yeah.
Nice. So can you tell me a little bit about, so your song Alihat, Goddesses, it celebrates the matriarchy, the mothers, grandmothers, female family members that support the kind of next generation. Can you tell me who your goddesses are and how they've shaped your view of the world and view of feminism as well?
Yeah, gosh, that's a beautiful question. I think elders and matriarchs became a big theme in my adulthood. I think when I was a bit younger, there was a need to... I think there was a resentment, it looked so patriarchal. Mm-hmm. But then I moved to England and I was like, oh, everywhere is patriarchal. I was like, and Elihat is very much about that. Feminism isn't a white thing. Like, this is so problematic. In uni, I was like introduced to feminism and it looked like Jane Austen and it looked like, basically white writers. And much later, when I was living here for a few years, I was like, damn, the first feminists in my life were like my great aunt Nejla. Like, damn, she was so badass. We have monobrows in the family. See, I pluck mine. My aunt Nejla never plucked her monobrow.
Nice.
That's so cool.
That's super cool, yeah.
She was an indigenous woman. She was growing her own food and she had, I don't know how many kids. How many kids does Aunt Nejla have? Around 10.
Where does she live, your Aunt Nejla?
She passed a few years ago, but she lived in Abrin, in Betroun.
Nice.
She never left. She was... And I was like, damn, that was really my first introduction to feminism. She was not taking shit from anybody, but she was loving. It was matriarchy. It wasn't performative femininity. Mm-hmm. It wasn't, this is your role and stay there. And there is a beauty and a power in matriarchy. The medicine, the healing, the knowledge. Totally. And that changed everything about how I think about feminism. I love that Tante Nejla came up like, hi, I love you, yeah.
Oh, that's lovely, yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's so many, there isn't just one form of feminism, is there? This is another thing where, like the white ideology dictates to the rest of the world how feminism should be viewed and expressed and experienced. There's many forms.
100%. It's about choice, isn't it? So there isn't really one way.
Totally.
To do it. Yeah, absolutely.
Your songs on the album, they cover everything from the right to cultural autonomy to fighting patriarchal destruction. And you sing about resistance, revolution. Was writing the album a cathartic process, and how did listeners respond? And also on top of that, I was wondering if in general you see music as a political act. Is it a form of activism for you?
Oh, girl. Okay.
Pam, pam, pam.
But an answer to your first question, the very short and clear answer without hesitation is yes. It was very cathartic. My God. It really was. And I think it was also the first time I was doing my own... I mean, these were my own words. These were... You know, I'd worked as a cover singer, as a jazz singer. I'd also done a lot of musical theater. I was an actor. So... And this is also very Western as a medium. This was the first time that I was... These were my own words. This was my own voice, my own melodies. It was also the first time that I was singing in Arabic. That on its own was cathartic, but then all the subject material and the personal journeys as well. Mm-hmm. Look, honestly, the most beautiful thing that came out of this was realizing that, like I mentioned earlier, how many of us have shared experiences, because being called a diaspora, it has an undertone of being scattered, right? Why were we not called a community, a global community? It was always diaspora. And we are displaced, so there is a sense of displacement. But putting the album out there and getting a response of like, wow, this is a mirror for so many of us. Because really, I wrote it for myself. Mm-hmm. I kept searching for a music that would give me what I was craving to hear and see. Mm-hmm. Couldn't find it. I made it.
Nice.
And
that's the way to do it.
It wasn't that simple, but yeah. And then so many people turned around and were like, this is my story too. And I was like, oh, okay. I'm never using the word diaspora again. It's community. Like, yeah. So that was beautiful. Amazing. And I was also, honestly, I did not expect the album and myself to be so embraced by the LGBTQIA+ communities. Like, so many queer platforms were like, this speaks to us. And I was like, amazing. This is the greatest honor ever. Like, that was beautiful as well. Yeah.
So it really connected with so many different communities.
I think so, you know, from the response that I got, and I hope so. And yeah, it was heartwarming, to say the least. Yeah.
Can you tell me about your song, Lalkil Awamish Lahada, which you released a few weeks after Lebanon's October Revolution, I believe? Was it a direct inspiration for the song? And what kind of impact did the revolution have on you, particularly being part of the Lebanese community around the world?
Yeah, it was definitely a direct response, or not response, I would say contribution. You know, I mean, I'm physically far away, and I was just watching this immense thing happen, and I wanted to contribute. But also I just woke up, unwrote it, and I was like, oh, here's a song, okay, it's about the revolution. And then I went to my bandmate, Max, who is my bass player. Mm-hmm. He's also a producer. He does his own stuff. Max, can you produce a song in one evening? He's like, ideally, no. I'm a bit of a perfectionist. I kind of twisted his arm a little bit. Nice. And it was done very quickly because I knew it was timely. I knew there was no point releasing it, 2 months after what was happening. But it was, I think, what I was able to offer concretely, because I wasn't there on the ground. Yeah.
إذا مش ناوي تحرر أسيرك
ما تتوقع تحصلها حريتك إذا مش ناوي تشارك حقوقك. ما تتوقع تشاهد تحريرك، ما في حق إذا ما سبقته العدالة. ما في ثورة إلا الثورة العالمية. المظلوم رح يبقى مظلوم طالما ظالم غيره. الحرية للكل أو مش لحدا. مش لحدا. وعي قلبك، فتح عيونك، استعد للحقيقة وشوف كل الحروب هي فارد حرب. إذا أنا مقموع غيري مقموع، إذا أنت مقموع غيرك مقموع. ما في حق إذا ما سبقته العدالة. ما في ثورة إلا الثورة العالمية. المظلوم رح يبقى مظلوم طالما ظالم غيره.
The song speaks about the fact that there's no freedom without freedom for everybody, no uprising without a global uprising. How interconnected do you think Lebanon's revolution was with other uprisings happening around the world at the same time? And do you see any kind of connection to the Arab Spring as well? What are some of the shared battles in the Lebanese revolution?
That's a beautiful phrase, shared battles, right? It really is, because, you know, when I hear the sentence, pick your battles, I always think like they are all one battle. Mm-hmm. And here's the thing, I'm just going to go straight to it. I don't think I can speak about Lebanese freedom.
Yep.
Without going into a thesis now. But, I mean, first of all, I think Lebanon as a nation state is a legacy of colonial violence. Mm-hmm. This is why we have a border, a nation state called Lebanon, specifically, you know, a passport, like a national identity. It's a political system. Before we were colonized by the French and the British, none of this existed, right? So already, I'm personally really not able to think about being Lebanese in that sense, right? As a nationality or kind of. On top of that, there's, not on top of that, really as a very direct result of colonial capitalist violence. All oppression is oppression. Like, we are literally all suffering under the same exact system.
Yeah.
It might manifest slightly differently in different places. It's also more immediately violent. I mean, Palestine is the first example that comes to mind. Mm-hmm. But, then we are also looking at Turtle Island. We are also looking at South Africa, at what we now call Australia. And there is a systemic oppression of indigenous ways of life.
Yeah.
Freedom, cultural autonomy. None of us will be free if we're only if it's like, well, I'm a non-black Lebanese cishet male and I want my rights, mate, you're never going to get them. You're never going to get them because we're all part of this ladder that has to be just completely destroyed.
Until it's broken down, there's no freedom for anybody. Yeah,
exactly. And I think that's what the song is about.
Yeah. It's a great song. I love it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Really. Can we talk a little bit about your influences in music? You shared a few of your current musical inspirations with me before we were talking today. The Swedish Gambian electro-pop artist Senea Bose, the Irish singer-songwriter Hiya, and also the Greek folk singer Melina Kana. What draws you to the music of these artists, and do they share any common sensibilities? And who else have you found strong inspiration in over the years?
I think they do. I think, okay, so when I first, let's say when I first released my album, and that's when I first realized that I had to do something called an interview and talk about my musical inspirations. I remember I always said, oh, my musical inspirations are so random because they came from all over the world and they didn't, follow an obvious racial or cultural thread. With time, I realized that they are not at all random. And what my soul is drawn to is, I used the word indigenous just now. And if the music is indigenous, I'm drawn to it. I mean, it can be from Ireland, as we mentioned, Hosier. It can be, Emel Mathlouthi is an example I didn't mention earlier, but her music is so indigenous. Like, it's really is on a DNA level. I don't know. And I think there is a music that is capitalist and a music that is indigenous. And from there, it doesn't matter where it comes from, really. I can, as a, Shami, Lebanese, let's say, woman, I can make very non-indigenous music. I can make, Rotana pop, and that's just, it's not really. So that, I think that's always what I've discovered draws me to a musical inspiration. We also mentioned Kulthum. I mean, the range. It's a prayer when she sings. Yeah.
Well, speaking about artists that and work that resonates with you, Hiya itself, it's a gesture of support for feminism, musical expression, and a space to celebrate some of the incredible female artists across the SWANA region in what's still very much a male-dominated industry, as we were talking about before. I was wondering if there's any, you mentioned Emel, who are some of the female artists in the region whose work really resonates with you at the moment, like contemporary artists?
Let's see. Yeah, there are many. The worst thing about this now is that the first artist I wanted to mention, her name is just not coming to my mind. Maisa.
Ah, yeah, nice.
That was a relief because I know her work so well, but it was one of those moments. Yeah, I think there is great power in, I think, some of Mesa's choices in how she exists in certain spaces. I mean, in the world, firstly, but in certain spaces, and how she shows up. There is a truth. It gives permission to other women to also just own who they are and their truth. I think when someone shows up with that much comfort with themselves, it really gives permission to other women to be like, wow, you're not judging me and you don't have to. And that's, wow, yeah, we can live like this. I mean, not to mention musically, she's very, there's such a, her talent is so varied, like from acoustic kind of ballady kind of, singing to them, I could speak until tomorrow about myself, yeah. And I do want to go back to Amal, because I just mentioned Amal quickly, but like كلمتي حرة, and I mean all of her work, but and also I find that there is a growth in Amal that, you know, it's very easy for an artist in particular, once you're a bit of a name, to kind of stay on brand. Such a bullshit word. But it's so beautiful that after so many years of being known as, you know, Amal, the kind of Tunisian inspirational, I'm sure that the world calls her political, I'm not sure if that's how she thinks about her music, singer, and then she just suddenly like can change directions musically and be like, well, I'm experimenting with this now and I'm the musician, so here it is. Yeah, it's really beautiful. There's also in all of her work, there is such a connection with the land and spirit and the universe. I mean, there are so many others, but okay, for now, we wrote a dissertation on Mesa and Amal.
Perfect.
I'm very happy with that.
Yeah. I read a really poignant article of yours that you wrote for Geldem, which was about how, as an Arab artist, you've already spoken about this a little bit, how you're tired of being told your music is hard to sell, while Arabic music is appropriated, exoticized by Western artists. I think you mentioned in the article Coldplay and their recent album. I was wondering about what your thoughts are on how we can change this. How can we go about decolonizing the music scene? How can we force the industry to change things? And how can artists kind of make their experiences, you know, choose their own path, the way that they want to go, without having this pressure from the industry?
I really recently sat down and I had to face a fact, which is that art is, in its very nature, it's not only incompatible with capitalism, it's a destroyer of capitalism. Really, if we look at what art is and has been since the very beginning. So I honestly don't have a clear answer, but I know now in my heart of hearts, in my soul of souls, that personally, I don't see how I can decolonize an inherently colonial practice. Now, what I do see is how I can exist outside of it to an extent, because ultimately we need money to live, and we're going to engage in some form of capitalism to some extent. But I think, and if I look back, so far I've kind of done that. I've not participated in major record labels I deleted my Instagram because my Instagram became exactly that. It became, okay, cool. I mean, the industry was so much more interested in the fact that I'm Arab with a shaved head than anything else. And it was like, that was so big. And that was like, this is your selling point, and push. And can you be a bit sexy, but a bit edgy, but a bit, and it was exhausting and sick. And I was like, this is not how I resist. I don't resist by being exploited. I mean, I can win the award and be the first Arab woman to this and the first Arab woman to that. I'm still on that ladder that I just mentioned.
Yeah.
So really just being like, I'm not playing this game. I don't need y'all. But I am honestly, the honest answer is that I am still exploring that. It is exhausting.
Is it very much a conscious effort that you have to kind of reflect on every decision that you make and check that you're kind of in line with how you want to, kind of your values within, as an artist, within the music industry?
That's it. I mean, you said it very, very well. Yeah. And I used to, and I also learned that even these decisions, they have to come from a soul place. I'm not going to sit down and calculate what's the best marketing ploy and it has to come from my spirit. Does this feel exploitative? Does this feel genuine? Is this something I want to do? Okay, cool. And then, am I being underpaid? Because that's a whole question for, in particular, I think women, and then even more so women of color.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. Is there some level of like camaraderie between other artists where you kind of, I don't know, share fees that you're getting and experiences in order to like have solidarity and fight back against being underpaid and being boxed in a certain way?
That's a very good question, actually. I mean, I would say there have been some conversations, and that's been very comforting. I have had some conversations with other Arab female artists, and also non-Arab, just kind of women of color artists. And it has been comforting to know that none of us are particularly happy about this. I think we're still at a place where, how shall I say? You know how... Well, I will share this with you. I think it's very common for a non-white person who emigrates to the West, capital T, capital W, to be taught, or if you were born a child of immigrants, to be taught that you have to be grateful for opportunity, as if someone's doing you a favor. I had to really teach myself that you're welcome, not thank you.
Yeah.
But it's very hard, and there is it's such a hierarchy. So there is still an anxiety around saying no and setting boundaries in the collective.
Totally.
I know from private conversations that people think I'm a bit mad when I tell them, no, I said no. And they're like, what? But you could have done this thing.
Yeah.
So there is still, because it's like, here are the crumbs and be grateful for what you get. And it's hard to say no. It's really hard to say no.
Yeah.
And yeah.
I mean, that's the level that's exhausting, isn't it? Because you're fighting a space for yourself within what is an exploitative industry, basically.
Yes.
Because it's led by money, like all industries that are led by money.
Yeah.
They're exploitative.
Yeah. By nature. Yeah.
Okay, so it's been a year without live music. If you could relive one concert, either your own or other artists, what would it be?
Gosh, man. I think I would love to go back to, and maybe I will, because I can, because I'm the boss when it comes to at least my own work. Mm-hmm. I think the very first concert I ever did as a solo artist, it was at Rich Mix in Shoreditch.
Nice.
And it was so simple. Like, there was no, what are you gonna wear? And you have to be this badass warrior goddess, and there's gonna be press, and there's gonna be this, and none of it. It was just, I went with one guitarist. That was it. And it was so real. That's a bit cheesy, but like, it was just, you could hear a pin drop. It was medicinal. It was art, you know. I mean, yeah, I did shows that were bigger, and I'm very proud of them. But there was this beautiful connection in the early shows. I think I would love to, when I am ready to go back, I would love to reestablish that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
What about in Lebanon? Is there anywhere that you've always wanted to play in Lebanon?
That's a very good question. I really want to play in Batroun. Like, I love it. Oh, it's so beautiful. And
on the
so
beach.
Honestly, exactly. And so much of my music is inspired by it. I mean, the song Little Home is completely inspired by, actually, the The home in Little Home is my aunt Nejla's home.
Really?
My great aunt Nejla's home. That's literally the house that I'm describing in that
Amazing.
song.
Final question. So it's been an undeniably difficult few years for artists in the UK and around the world. Obviously, the pandemic, a near total shutdown of live music, and this really follows years of venue closures and a transforming industry in many ways. What are your hopes and fears for the music industry in London and around the world in general, post-pandemic?
I want there to be no such thing as a music industry. It's the very honest answer. I really do. And look, again, I do not have a clear cut. Like, I'm not here to just offer a solution, but it's just, if I'm going to be very truthful, that's my honest hope. It's just, can we not industrialize art? Like, and I know we can. I know that the resources are there. The community is there.
Yeah.
I know it's there. That's my honest hope. Who knows?
It would be nice, if there was a way to exist outside this.
Yeah. And I think, look, on an artist level, for all of us artists, I think my hope is that we really understand the gift that we have, and that really nobody is doing you a favor. Nobody is doing you a favor when you are on the stage. It's because you deserve to be here.
Yeah.
It's so important to say this out loud. I think because also, look, first we are exploited as women of color, but then there is pressure on us not to speak about it.
Yeah.
And we have to start sharing, because
Definitely.
There's so
Sharing
much power
experiences.
in sharing.
Yeah, totally. Great. Well, that's a great ending. Thank you so much, Juliana. It's been a really great interview.
Thank you.
Been a pleasure to have you.
It's been absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much, Natalie. And
Thank you.
Best of luck with the rest of Hiya.
Thank you so much.
Cool.
أعشق الأرض تحت قدمي كل دعسة من رجلي تحرك دقات قلبي دق دق صفا صفا أركع الأرض لغير الصلاة أتمسك بسجادة ذكريات أغمض عيني أسترجع حبي خطوة 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 فأكرس ليلي وأفديك بروحي وأهديك جسدي لكن دائما لكن دائما لكن دائما أحرس قلبي عبطنا الشمس وعبطنا الأمس وما عدنا نعرف الصلاة من الجنس القبر من اللبس الجريمة من اللمس مرقنا الحاجز كنت قاطع نفس جاوبني انت مهيج او مغروم ذكوري او مظلوم واعي واذا واعي مين عم بتلوم ما عاد عارفين الموت من النوم العلم من الظلم من الكس من الكون بس عطشنا ما بيرتوي إلا من هون اسمع بدور الدولاب وبدور الدولاب وبدور هالدولاب وقلبك بعد مضى تاريخنا بيندرس بأي كتاب طيب والأجنبي بعطيه أي جواب أنا كيف افتح له قلبي وبعد ما فتحت له الباب هو وصل على العدسة وما كنا حاسبين له حساب اعتبروا بيت أمه وذبح البواب وما مسح صباطه إلا بوجوه الولاد بس هو حلو وأشقر وما بينلام أول مرة عالرايق عمهل تاني مرة تعا نعبد بعل بعد فترة منتعربط بالأمل هو حلو وأشقر ما عدنا عارفين الفرق علمونا إنه الحلو أشقر والأشقر حلو واللي عيونه زرق واللي معه ورق نص إله ونص إنسان نص إله ونص إنسان